Far away from Earth, in a quiet corner of the Andromeda galaxy, a peaceful alien species lived in silence and science. They were called the Varelians. Varelians believed in order and harmony. Their world had no war, no weapons, no anger. They spent their lives studying the stars, exploring distant planets, and listening for signals from intelligent life. They did not know that one day, a sound would come that would change everything inside the listening tower of their research station commander. Ralph stood with his team. Large glowing panels covered the walls, each screen showing waves of energy from different parts of the universe. They had been listening for years. Most signals were weak, soft waves from dead planets. Some were natural. Some were empty, but then one day, the station picked up something different. Technician Vari was the first to hear it. She leaned closer to her console. Her hands trembled as the wave pattern spiked and twisted. The signal was loud, wild, and angry. It was not like anything they had heard before. Vari looked at the others. Her voice was shaking. "This is not a natural wave. This is a message or a warning." Commander Ralph ordered it to be played out loud. The speakers inside the station turned on, and the room was filled with noise, not just sound, but something that felt like a storm made of metal, and fire drums pounded like thunder. Guitars screamed like falling stars. Voices roared with words they could not understand. The walls of the station shook. One researcher covered his ears. Another fell to the floor. A few tried to run. Ralph stood frozen, his mind trying to make sense of what he was hearing. Sound felt alive. It was chaos, it was fury, it was power. The signal came from a small blue planet far across space, a planet known to humans as Earth. The Varelians had seen Earth before. They had ignored it. A small world with no signs of advanced travel, no dangerous weapons, no galactic activity. But now, this sound, this scream, was something else. Entirely. Ralph turned to his science officer. "What is this? What are we hearing?" The officer ran analysis. His screen showed words from the signal, translated with difficulty. The words were sharp and dark. "Fight, burn, die, rise, scream." The Varelians gasped. They believed this was not music. They believed this was a battle cry, a signal of war. Another technician zoomed in on the signal source. It came from a gathering. Thousands of humans were standing together, shouting and jumping in front of giant machines that blasted the same sound to the Varelians. It looked like a war ritual. Ralph ordered silence. "Turn it off. I need to think." The room went quiet, but the sound still echoed in their minds. Ralph spoke again. "We must send this to the council. This is not just a message. This is a warning. The humans are violent, and they are calling others to join their war." The technicians prepared the data. They labeled the message "Unknown Weaponized Signal from Earth. Possible threat. Do not engage." But one Varelian in the back of the room did not agree. His name was Zirin. He was young and curious. He had never seen war. He had never known fear. To him, the sound was not only violent, it was alive. It had energy. It had emotion. He spoke quietly. "What if this is not war? What if this is how they speak or how they feel?" Ralph turned to him. "No being makes a sound like that for peace." But Zarin kept thinking. Later that night, Zarin returned to the signal room. He played the message again. Alone this time, he listened carefully. He felt the rhythm. He felt the anger, but he also felt something else: passion, pain, and purpose. Zarin watched the human images. Their faces were not angry. They were focused. They were freezer, and whispered to himself, "Maybe they are not calling for war. Maybe they are screaming so they do not explode from the inside." He saved a copy of the signal and wrote a private report for himself. Subject: human sound wave. Possible communication through emotion. He looked out at the stars, at the small blue planet in the distance. He wanted to understand more. He wanted to see the humans with his own eyes. He wanted to feel the sound in person. Back in the main hall, Commander Ralph made his decision. "We will monitor Earth from a distance. We will not respond. We will not approach. They are dangerous." But Zarin had other plans inside his chamber. He packed his translator, a light shield, and a ship key. The journey would take days, maybe weeks. But he was ready. The message had called him, not with words, but with fire, and he was going to answer as he left the station. He looked one last time at the recording. The file name blinked on the screen: Heavy Metal Zarin. Smiled whatever it was about to change the universe. Zarin's ship glided through the black sea of space. No lights on the outside, no signals from within, only silence around him, but inside his mind there was noise, so much noise. The sound he had heard back on the station still echoed in his thoughts. The heavy sound, the fire and rage, it had shaken his very being, and yet he had not been afraid. He had been drawn to it, pulled by a force he did not understand. The other Varelians had called it madness. They said Earth was dangerous, that the sound was proof of chaos. But Zarin wanted to know for himself. He wanted to hear it, not through speakers, not through weak digital copies. He wanted to hear it in the air, feel it on his skin, see the creatures who created it. The journey to Earth was long. Too long for most Varelians, but Zarin didn't feel the time pass. He watched Earth grow larger in his view. Blue oceans, green land, white clouds moving like breath over the surface. He tapped into Earth's satellite feeds. At first he saw news traffic, commercials, all of it confusing, all of it bright and loud. Then he found the signal again, but this time, it was not just audio, it was video. It was an event. A gathering was happening in a desert place. Thousands of humans, machines, lights, massive black boxes stacked high into the sky. Zarin locked onto that location, the festival. The humans called it Hellstrike, a name that sent shivers through the translation software too. Varelians, that sounded like a battlefield, but Zarin wanted to see it with his own eyes. He brought the ship down miles away, far enough to stay hidden, close enough to walk. He covered his form with a mimic field. It bent light around him, made him appear invisible to humans, as long as they didn't touch him, as long as he didn't make a sound. Zarin walked toward the gathering. The closer he got, the louder the sound became. It was not just music, it was a wave. It rolled through the air like thunder. The ground shook beneath his feet. Every step felt like walking during a storm. When he reached the edge of the crowd, he paused. What he saw did not match the fear back at the station. Humans were jumping, dancing, screaming. Some painted their faces, others waved flags. Many wore black with strange symbols, skulls, fire names. He did not understand, but none of them looked angry. They looked free. He moved deeper into the crowd, careful, silent. Everywhere around him there was fire, smoke, lights bursting in the sky. The band on the stage stood like giants, their hair wild, their voices full of power. Guitarists struck their instruments with force. The sound felt like lightning. Drums beat like the march of ancient beasts, and the crowd loved it. Zarin looked at their faces, eyes closed, smiling, shouting words together. They were not at war. They were at peace with their rage. He did not understand how, but he felt it. It was emotion, raw, pure, honest. Back on the Varelian station, Commander Relf received a message. Zarin's ship was gone, traced toward Earth. Unauthorized mission. Relf frowned. Zarin was reckless, emotional, but not dangerous. Still, Relf had a responsibility. He activated the silent drone system. Small devices designed for distant observation. They were fast, unseen, and already on their way to Earth. Back at the festival, Zarin stood behind the stage where workers moved gear and instruments. Saw one human who caught his attention. The man wore black leather, long hair, tied beard like a wild animal, and his arms were covered in ink symbols, but his eyes were kind. He was laughing with others, tuning a guitar, drinking water from a silver can. Zarin followed him, careful to stay hidden. But then something went wrong. A human child, running with a balloon, bumped into him. The mimic field blinked. For just 1 second, Zarin's true form appeared. The child froze, stared with wide eyes, dropped the balloon. Zarin leaned close, hoping to calm the child. But before he could speak, the man with the beard saw them. Zarin turned to run, but the man moved faster. He grabbed something from a box, held it like a weapon. Zarin stopped moving. He raised his hands. He didn't want to fight. The man didn't shoot. He didn't call for help. Instead, he stared and said one word. Aline. Zarin nodded. The man laughed, dropped the tool he was holding, and stepped closer. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small music player, placed headphones gently on Zarin's head. Then he pressed play. Zarin heard the sound again, but this time it was not loud and wild, it was clean. Controlled. He heard the details. The precision, the craft. He closed his eyes and felt something strange. He felt human. The man introduced himself. Name's Jake. Welcome to the part. Zarin tried to speak. His translator buzzed. He said his name, told Jake he was here to understand. Jake smiled then. Stick around, you're about to see something louder than space itself later. That night, Zarin stood beside Jake, watching the crowd, watching the unity. He sent a message to himself. A log entry. Humans are not warriors, not monsters. They are loud, but not broken. They use music like we use light, to speak, to feel, to connect. Back in the Varelian station, Commander Relf received a second signal. It was from one of the drones near Earth. It showed fire, crowd, smoke, and Zarin standing among them. To the Council, it looked like invasion. To Commander Relf, it looked like betrayal. He sent a warning to the fleet. Prepare for contact. Earth is active. Zarin may be compromised. Activate defense protocols. But Zarin did not know. He was too busy listening, too busy feeling, too busy learning that sometimes the loudest noise in the galaxy comes not from war, but from the human heart. Above Earth, hidden among the clouds, a silent Varelian fleet moved into orbit. Black ships floated in formation, invisible to human eyes. Listening, watching, waiting. Commander Relf stood inside the lead ship, his eyes fixed on the screen before him. The image showed Zarin still on Earth, still surrounded by what the Council believed was danger. Relf did not understand why Zarin had not returned. He had broken protocol. He had made contact. He had gone too deep. Relf had sent multiple messages, all unanswered. Inside the Council chambers on Varelia Prime, a decision was made. Zarin might be compromised. The humans might be using him. The signal might have been a trap. The Council approved limited action. Observe, and if needed, interfere. Back on Earth, Zarin was no longer hiding. He walked among humans. He spoke with Jake. He listened to bands. He watched the people, and the more he saw, the more confused he became. The sound that had once frightened his species now felt like something beautiful. He had watched an older man cry during a guitar solo. He had seen strangers hug after a song. He had felt the beat of the drums match the rhythm of his own heart. Zarin understood now. This was not a war cry. This was a release. This was truth expressed in sound. He asked Jake once, "Why do your people play such violent music?" Jake laughed and answered, "Because sometimes the world feels violent, and when we scream into the noise, it doesn't feel as heavy anymore." Zarin wrote that line in his notes. Humans scream to feel lighter. He planned to send a report back to the station. He would tell the truth. He would explain everything. But before he could, something unexpected happened. One of the Varelian scout drones stationed above the desert picked up a sudden energy spike. It mistook the concert stage equipment for weapons. The speakers, the lights, the sound cannons used for effects. The drone flagged it as hostile technology, and it sent a signal to the fleet. Prepare for emergency containment on the main ship. Commander Relf watched the alert. The screen showed fire from the pyrotechnics, smoke rising, humans running, screaming. To Relf, it looked like the beginning of a ground attack. He believed Zarin had failed. He believed the humans were rising in violence. He sent a message to his ground units: deploy in shadow, contain before escalation, do not let Earth strike first. That night, the wind shifted in the desert. The strike first. That night, music played louder. The crowd was bigger, and Zarin stood at the edge of the stage. With Jake, they were watching the final band prepare. It was the headliner, the one humans had waited for all year. The band was called Salforga. Their sound, their message, their presence, it was different. Jake said they didn't just play metal. They made people feel like warriors, even when they were broken inside. As the first note hit, the crowd erupted. The ground vibrated, lights flashed. The sky seemed to crack open, but it was not just the lights from the stage above the clouds. Small flashes blinked. Silent ships opened their doors, and the Varelian shadow units began to descend, invisible, fast. Red. Zarin felt something strange in the air. He looked up. He felt the shift. He knew what was happening. He turned to Jake. There, coming. Jake didn't Understandwo, Zaran reached for his communicator, trying to contact the fleet, trying to stop them, but it was too late. In the middle of the crowd, a shimmer appeared, a strange movement in the air. Then another people turned, pointed phones came out. A man shouted, "It's a hologram, cool effects." Zaran rushed forward. He could see the Varelian shadows moving, slipping between people, scanning the gear, marking the band. Ship above sent a signal, target locked, prepare containment. Zaran shouted through his translator, "Stop, they are not enemies. They are artists." But his voice was drowned by the music. The next moment, one of the Varelian units powered up its containment field. Visible wave pulsed through the stage. The lights exploded, sound shattered, and the music stopped. The crowd froze. Zaran jumped on the stage, pulled Jake back, stood in front of the band. He activated his mimic shield, dropped the field, and revealed himself to everyone. For the first time the humans saw Zaran in his true form. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones lifted. Some ran, some stayed. Zaran raised his hands. He spoke in clear tones. "Do not fear me, I came to listen. Not to fight." But from the sky, the main ship began to descend. Slow, silent, dark humans stared. Children pointed. Old fans shouted that this was the best show of all time. Jake stood beside Zaran. "You need to stop your people. This is not going to end well." Zaran opened his communicator. He tried again. "This is Zaran, stand down. The humans are not hostile. This is music, not war." Commander Ralph heard his voice. He paused, but the Council's orders had already reached him. The Council believed Earth was a threat. They had seen too much fire, too much noise. Zaran stepped forward. He shouted louder, "If you stop them now, you will destroy everything we came to learn. They are not our enemies. They are just louder than we expected." The music returned. Its forge started playing again. The crowd followed. Drums beat like a heartbeat. Guitars roared like engines. Even the Varelian scouts paused. Some turned toward the stage, their sensors picking up strange emotional patterns: confusion, excitement, respect. Ralph stared at his crew. He saw their hesitation. He felt something deep, something new. He ordered all units to halt. "Stand down. Let the music play." The ships pulled back. The scouts vanished from sight. Zaran stood in the center of the stage, eyes closed, listening. Jake leaned close. "What now?" Zaran smiled. "Now we learn how to feel with sound." The sun rose over the desert like a glowing ember. Soft light spilled across the empty concert field. Plastic cups and dust danced in the breeze. The stage stood quiet now. No fire, no screams, only silence and the slow breath of morning. Zaran sat on a speaker box near the edge of the stage. His silver skin shimmered gently in the sunlight. His eyes stared out at the desert, but his mind was still inside the sound. Last night had changed everything. His mission, his understanding, his own body even felt different, as if something inside had unlocked. Beside him, Jake sat cross-legged, holding a black coffee cup in one hand and a worn-out guitar in the other. They had stayed up all night, talking, listening, thinking. Jake looked at Zaran and chuckled. "Not what I expected. Most aliens in movies try to take over Earth. You just wanted to headbang." Zaran blinked, still learning Earth humor. "I did not know what headbang meant, but I believe I have done it many times now. My neck is sore." Jake laughed louder and handed Zaran a pair of sunglasses. "Try these. You'll look more human and less like a glowing robot from space." Zaran placed the glasses on his face. They slid down his nose awkwardly. Jake nodded in approval. "Perfect. Now you just need a leather jacket and a bad attitude." Zaran looked around. "What is a bad attitude? Is that another human object?" Jake smiled, but didn't answer. He started strumming his guitar instead, a slow melody, gentle, but with an edge like wind moving through fear. Zaran listened. His head tilted to the side. He felt calm, connected. He spoke softly. "Your people use sound to say things without words. You do not just speak, you express." Jake nodded. "Yeah. Sometimes words are too small for how we feel, so we make noise big enough to hold the emotions." Zaran sat forward. "Do all humans understand this?" Jake shook his head. "Some do, but the ones who do, we find each other in the music." Zaran leaned back. He looked up at the sky back home. "We communicate through light patterns, color, shape, movement. But it is quiet, always quiet. Jake set his guitar down and stood. Come on, I want to show you something. They walked across the empty field, past the barriers, past the trucks, into the far end of the site where the crew had set up. Camp Jake led him to a small tent covered in stickers, skulls, flames, lightning bolts, words like Slayer and Death March inside. It smelled like sweat, leather and metal, but it was filled with instruments, guitars hanging like sacred weapons, old amps, humming softly, posters on every wall. This is my gear tent, where all the magic happened. Sharon touched the strings of a guitar. They buzzed under his fingers. He stepped back quickly. It sings from the smallest touch. Jake smiled. That one's tuned to drop. It growls if you let it. Zoran looked around. Each object was new, unknown, but not frightening. He picked up a drumstick, tapped it on a cymbal. A sharp crash filled the air. He froze. Jake grinned now. That's more like it. Zoran turned slowly. Why does this feel powerful? It is only sound. Jake sat on a crate. Because sound shapes the inside of us. It doesn't just enter your ears, it moves your blood. It changes how you breathe. That's why metal matters. It's not just music, it's survival for some. Pia Plazarin placed the drumstick down. I want to understand more. Jake stood up and walked over to a dusty vinyl player. He opened the box and pulled out an old record. He blew the dust off and looked at Zoran. This one might crack your circuits, he placed. The record set the needle and stepped back. The speakers hissed for a second. Then came the roar, a wall of guitars, drums pounding like thunder, a voice tearing through the noise like a storm. Zoran froze again, but not from fear. He let it enter him. Closed his eyes, let his arms fall to his sides, and just listened. The sound moved like fire through his system. His heart adjusted, his breath matched the beat. His fingers twitched with every riff. Jake watched quietly, nodding slowly. When the track ended, Zoran opened his eyes. He spoke in a low voice. This was not a scream, it was a call, a signal of pain but also strength. Jake looked impressed. You got it. That's metal. It's loud, it's heavy, but it carries truth. Zoran stepped outside the tent, looked out at the empty field again. I must send this back. They need to know. They were wrong. Jake raised an eyebrow. You think they'll believe you now? Zoran hesitated. I do not know. But they must hear it for themselves. He lifted his communicator, tapped into the fleet frequency. This is Zoran. I request immediate attention. No danger here. Only music transmission attached. He aimed the device toward the speakers and played the recording back above. Earth inside the Varelian ship. Commander Ralph heard the first note. The music blasted through the system, confused the sensors, rattled the hull. Some crew covered their ears. Others just stared. Ralph stood motionless. This is the same sound, but different. There is something in. I've kept listening as the track continued. He felt something shift, not in his ship, but inside himself. He felt something. After the final note, he sat down. Send this to the council. Full recording. Full report. I want them to hear the truth, not the fear. Back on Earth, Zoran lowered the communicator. Jake walked up behind him. So think we started an intergalactic fan club. Zoran smiled. Something greater, a connection, a bridge built from sound, and maybe someday, Varelians and humans will share the same stage. One species of silence, one species of noise, both learning the rhythm of each other, together. Far above Earth, inside the lead Varelian command ship, Commander Ralph sat in silence. He stared at the transmission from Zoran, the one filled with loud music. Voices roaring, drums shaking the walls, guitars screaming through the air. He had listened to it once, then again, then a third time. Still, he could not decide what it meant. Part of him remembered fear, the same fear he felt the first time the signal arrived. But now, there was something else. Confusion, curiosity, doubt. His crew waited for orders. Some believed the signal was dangerous. Others thought Zoran had lost control. Many still believed Earth was a threat. Real turned to his communication officer. Send a message to the council. Request guidance. Explain the situation we have received. A second signal, louder than before, but it came without violence and from our own agent. The officer nodded and started the process. Ralph stood and looked out the observation window. Below them, the planet rotated slowly. Clouds drifted, oceans shimmered. Lights flickered across continents. Earth looked peaceful from above, but the sound told another story. In the distance, other ships from the fleet waited in silence, their captains nervous, their weapons idle, but Armageddon had caused disruption. His actions were unexpected, his judgment not trusted by everyone back on Earth. Zarin stood near the festival site. The music was over, the crowd was gone, only cleanup crews remained. Jake walked beside him, carrying an empty guitar case. Both were quiet for a long time. Finally Jake spoke. "Do you think your people will understand now? Do they get what music means to us?" Sharon looked up at the sky. "Some might. Others will be afraid of what they do not feel." Jake smiled. "Sounds like humans. We've got the same trouble." Zarin nodded slowly. "Fear and misunderstanding. They travel faster than any ship." Suddenly his communicator lit up. "Message incoming from the council." He pressed the device to his temple, closed his eyes, listened. When he opened them, his face had changed. Serious, worried. Jake noticed right away. "What did they say? Is it bad?" Zarin lowered the device. "They do not believe I am in control. They think I have been influenced. They are sending an envoy to extract me. Possibly more than just that." Jake frowned. "They're sending soldiers." A whole group. Zarin stepped back and looked up again. "They think Earth might be weaponizing emotion. They see the sound as a kind of attack. They believe the loudness is a strategy, a tool to shake our minds." Jake scoffed. "Well, they're not completely wrong. Music does shake people. That's the whole point." Zarin didn't smile. "They do not see it as art. They see it as invasion through frequency." Jake tossed his empty case on the ground. "So what do we do now? Wait and let them walk in with their tech and suits and scanners, tear apart our amps, shut down every sound system like it's a bomb." Zarin looked toward the road. Trucks were pulling away. The festival was over, but the energy still lingered in the dust. He placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. "I need to speak to your leaders. Who speaks for Earth? Who controls your planetary defense?" Jake laughed. "You're kidding, right? This is Earth. No one controls everything. We barely agree on lunch." Sharan paused. "Then who would they trust?" "Someone strong, someone respected." Jake rubbed his chin, thinking, then smiled. "There is someone, but he doesn't wear a suit. He wears black, and his voice alone can move a stadium." Zarin raised an eyebrow. "A politician?" Jake shook his head. "A legend, a metal singer. He's not just famous, he's a symbol. If he speaks, people listen. Even the kind of people who never listened." Zarin stepped closer. "Take me to him." Hours later, in a private studio far from the city, a man named Marcus Steele stood in front of a microphone. Tall, grizzled, covered in tattoos from his neck to his boots. His voice had shaken stages for 30 years. His lyrics were written like battle scrolls. His presence felt like thunder wrapped in human skin. Jake and Zarin waited outside the booth. Marcus finished a verse, stepped out, took one look at Zarin, and said nothing. He lit a cigarette, sat down, staring for a long minute, then spoke. "So, you're the alien everyone's talking about?" Zarin nodded. "Once I came to listen. Now I must speak. I need your help." Marcus exhaled smoke slowly. "Help with what?" Zarin explained. "The fleet, the council, the fear, the signal that started it all. The misunderstanding that was growing with each hour." He told Marcus that they were being watched, that a ship might land any moment, that Earth could be seen as a threat if no one responded correctly. Marcus leaned back, his face unreadable. Then he stood, walked to a shelf, pulled out an old vinyl record. He handed it to Zarin. "This was the first album I ever made. We recorded it in a basement. Broke, hungry, angry." Zarin turned to the cover in his hands. It showed a man screaming into a void. Marcus pointed to it. "That scream, that was real. It came from a place inside I didn't even know existed. It saved my life. It saved other lives." Then he looked Zarin straight in the eyes. "If your people are afraid of that, then they're afraid of truth." Zarin lowered the record. "They are not evil, only cautious. But the time for fear is ending." Marcus nodded once. "Then let's give them a show, one they won't forget." Back in orbit, the Varelian envoy ship prepared for descent. They had been cleared by the council to land, to locate Zarin and bring him home. But what they found was something unexpected. Thousands of humans gathered outside the studio grounds. No protest signs, no weapons. Only music. Speakers lined the road, guitars in every direction, drums pounding in rhythm, and on the main platform, Marcus stood, holding a microphone as Zarin stood beside him, translator ready. Spoke Zarin translated, "This is not a planet of war. This is a planet of sound. You feared our scream, but never asked why we scream. We scream to heal. We scream to stand. We scream to live. You cannot silence that. Because it is not just noise, it is soul." Envoy did not respond at first. They just listened then. A soft pulse came through the Varelian system. Message received. Transmission clear. Stand down. Zarin smiled. Marcus nodded. The misunderstanding was not erased, but it was heard, and that was the beginning of peace. The air above Earth shimmered with tension. The Varelian envoy had not left. Their ships hovered in low orbit, still silent, still watching on. The ground. Zarin moved through the crowd with heavy steps. He could feel the weight of every eye on him. He had spoken to the council. He had shown them truth. But truth alone was not always enough. They were listening. But they were not convinced. Beside him, Jake adjusted the cables of a large sound rig. Sweat rolled down his face, but his hands didn't stop. Behind them, Marcus Steele stood at center stage, guitar across his back, eyes closed, breathing slow. This was no ordinary show. This was a message to the stars. Jake looked at Zarin. "Are they still up there? Are they watching us right now?" Zarin nodded yes. Every move, every sound. Jake smiled and picked up a bass. "Then let's give them something they'll never forget." The plan was simple. One final performance, a sound so raw, so honest, so powerful, that even a silent alien council would understand, not through language but through vibration, through volume, through feeling. Gates opened. Thousands of people arrived from nearby cities. They brought signs, speakers, homemade instruments, old band shirts, painted faces. There were no guards, no tickets, no fences, just humans coming together for sound. Marcus stepped forward and raised one hand. The crowd went silent. Even the birds stopped moving. His voice echoed from the mic. "We are not here to fight. We are here to speak, and this is our voice." He turned to Zarin. "You ready?" Alien ambassador of metal. Zarin gave a short nod. The sun reflected off his skin like steel. His heart beat faster than ever before. Marcus turned back to the crowd. "This one is called Earth's loudest weapon." The lights flared. The first guitar note rang out. It was deep, low, like the ground itself was waking up. Then came the drums, slow at first, then faster. The bass kicked in like a second heartbeat. Then Marcus sang. His voice didn't just carry through the speakers. It pushed through bones. It climbed into hearts. It made eyes water. The words didn't matter, not in that moment. It was the sound, the energy, the pure explosion of soul above Earth. Inside the Varelian command ship, Commander Ralph watched in silence. Sensors went wild, energy spikes, emotional readings at maximum sound levels, beyond safe range. His crew looked to him. Some were nervous. Others were curious. He could see the crowd. Thousands of humans moving in perfect chaos, as if driven by instinct. As if they were one. And then he heard it, the scream. Not one of pain, not one of fear, but a scream of release, a scream of truth. He stood up, walked closer to the main screen, and spoke quietly. "What are they doing? What are they trying to show us? The science?" Officer looked up. "They are not showing. They are sharing. This is not for us. It is from them, and we are just lucky enough to witness it." Another officer added, "It is not a weapon. It is who they are." Rielf watched as Zarin stepped forward again on the stage, surrounded by smoke and fire, and spoke into the mic. "This is the soul of Earth. It is loud, it is heavy, but it is not hate. It is the sound of survival, the music of a species that refuses to break, even when the world tries to crush them." Jake joined him, guitar roaring, fingers flying, hair whipping in the wind. Then the crowd began to sing with them. Thousands of voices, all different, all together, no rehearsals, no scripts, only sound and fire. The Varelian ships picked up something new, not just sound, but signal, a pattern, a rhythm that matched brain waves. They weren't just hearing it. They were feeling it inside the council chamber, far away on Varelia Prime. The highest minds watched in stunned silence. No translation, no explanation, just music. Raw and unfiltered. One elder stood and finally spoke. They are not afraid to feel. They are not afraid to hurt. They take pain and make it beautiful. Another elder added, they are loud. Because silence failed them back on Earth. The final solo began. Marcus stepped back, letting Jake take center stage. The strings cried, screamed, laughed, and in that moment, even the sky seemed to pause as Zarin raised his hands. Not in command, but in respect, he turned his face toward the stars and said, we are not a threat. We are not an army. We are just a song waiting to be heard. The last note rang out, echoing into the clouds. Then silence, real, pure silence. No one moved. No one breathed. Then a slow hum came from above, a deep vibration, low, calm, not threatening. The Varelian ship opened a light field. It stretched across the sky, soft colors, waves of motion. It was their answer, not words, not weapons, but light, their own language, shared back in return. Zarin smiled. He stepped off the stage. He had done what no one expected. He had made two worlds speak through music. Jake threw his arm around him. So what do we call this new genre? Galactic metal. Zarin looked out over the field. At the people, at the sky. We call it peace, loud, but true and high above Earth, in the deepest part of space. Other species listened. Other eyes turned. The sound had traveled beyond one world. Beyond one message. Earth had spoken, and the universe was listening. 1 month had passed since the sound that shook the stars. Earth returned to its rhythm. Cars moved, cities buzzed, music played. But something had changed. Not everyone knew it. Not everyone saw it. But somewhere above, eyes were watching, ears were listening. Hearts were learning. Across the Varelian fleet, a new message was circulating. It was not a warning. It was not a report. It was a playlist curated by Zarin, approved by the council. Named by Jake, the Heavy Humanity Project. 7 tracks, each from a different human band, each chosen for its power, not just musical power, but emotional depth. First track was the original signal, the one that started it all, now understood, now respected. The Varelians had changed. They still believed in silence, still found peace in stillness. But now some of them moved their heads to rhythm, some tapped their claws during work shifts. Some had even formed their own group. They called it Echo Rain, the first alien metal band in the galaxy. Inspired by Earth, built by sound, guided by emotion. But it was not just Varelia that changed. Earth had noticed too. Something strange was happening to the skies. Signals were returning. Bright shapes in the distance, objects moving faster than human machines, but none of them brought danger. Only data, only questions, only interest. One night, Zarin stood outside a music club in Los Angeles. The streets smelled like pizza and hot cables. He wore sunglasses, not for disguise, but for comfort. Inside the club, Jake was performing. Smaller venue this time. No smoke cannons, no massive crowds, just music and people who. Zarin turned his head as a small child approached. The boy held out a notebook and a pen. He looked nervous. Are you the metal alien? Can I have your autograph? Zarin smiled, took the pen, and carefully signed to a future voice of Earth, Zaran. Fey boy ran back to his parents, eyes glowing, dreams growing. Later that night, Jake and Zarin sat on the roof, looking at the stars. Jake held a soda, and Zarin held a glowing blue drink. Sent from Varelia. They toasted in silence. Jake spoke first. Never thought I'd end up in a galactic band. But here we are. Zarin nodded. The tour begins soon. 5 planets confirmed. 3 more interested. All of them curious about Earth. And what we sound like when we're loud. Jake grinned. Loud is what we do best. Zarin looked serious. Are you ready for this? Other species will not understand at first. Some will fear. Some will resist. They may think you are screaming at them. Jake leaned back. We won't scream at them. We'll scream with them. Eventually they'll get it. A week later, the first show of the tour began. Not on Earth, not on Varelia, but on a neutral moon, known only as Station Halo 9. A giant glass dome stood over the concert field. Stars visible through the ceiling, gravity stable, atmosphere adjusted for all species. The crowd was beyond anything. Jake had imagined aliens from 10 different planets, different sizes, different shapes, different sounds, some with tentacles, some with wings, some with no faces, only sensors. They waited curious, nervous, excited. Zurin stood beside Jake backstage, wearing a black jacket. Wires braided into his arms like tattoos. Jake tuned his guitar, cracked his knuckles, whispered to himself, "Let's change." The universe, the lights dimmed, the stage lit up, the crowd grew quiet. Then the first note, deep, slow, powerful, a ripple moved through the crowd. Some aliens flinched, others tilted their heads, a few began to glow in response. Then the drums came fast, precise. Louder than thunder. Then the scream. Jake let out the voice that had once frightened an entire race. But now, it was heard with different ears. Sharon translated the lyrics in real time, sending the meaning through signals, not word for word, but heart to heart. This is who we are, not warriors, not beasts, but beings of sound, of pain, of strength. Some in the audience stepped back, some stepped forward. Some just stood still, but none of them left. They listened, they watched humans cry on stage, laugh on stage, roar with feeling. One alien raised a glowing limb in the air, another followed soon. The entire dome was lit with color. A wave of unity. Jake shouted into the mic, "Are you feeling this? This is real, this is alive, this is us." The dome shook, not from weapons, but from speakers, from energy, from connection. At the end of the set, Zurin stepped to the front. He raised his hands and spoke. "Today, you did not hear music. You heard Earth, the real Earth, not the buildings, not the politics, the people. And now, you are part of it." The crowd erupted. Some screamed, some pulsed light, some made sounds never heard before. It didn't matter. It was all part of the new sound after the show. The messages poured in from moons, from ships, from planets still hiding in deep systems. They all said the same thing: "Come play for us. We want to hear your scream." And so the tour grew. More planets, more music, more connection, and Earth, that small blue planet once seen as primitive, became the center of something no one expected. Not a war, not an empire, but a movement built on distortion, on rhythm, on heart. Zurin became the ambassador of expression. Jake became the voice of change, and Marcus, he never missed a show together. They did not build an army, they built an audience, and everywhere they went, they left behind more than sound. They left understanding, empathy, and proof that sometimes the loudest cry is the one asking not for war but for someone to listen.